All right. Good evening, everyone. This is Kyle with Kyle Talks. Still figuring out this whole YouTube thing. I love movies. I've always liked talking about movies, watching movies. I love stories. Who doesn't love storytelling, right? And recently I've become interested in movies from my formative years, my adolescent years, so the mid 2000s or the 2000s in general. And there were a lot of movies that came out in that time that I think we didn't really have much respect for when they came out. I can think of movies I saw when I was a kid. So I was in my teens, early teens at that time. Star Wars: The Phantom Menace had come out. Star Wars: Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, and those are my childhood films. Those are movies that I grew up with and that I loved and I was obsessed with. And the toys, the memorabilia, the everyone, all your friends would talk about them all the time. And so I've noticed this trend recently that we're all revisiting these films. And of course, Star Wars is the big series that we talk about, as well as Lord of the Rings. We were really spoiled with good movie series back in the day, back in those times. At the time, our parents were probably complaining about the trope of, or the typical, like, oh, they had to make a sequel. But no, those were series that were designed and intended to be multiple installments. So it was a little different than it is now. Now we're just pumping out as many as we can just to for a cash grab, which is failing as we are watching before our eyes. And speaking of failure, I want to talk about Argylle. It just came out. It's a movie directed by Matthew Vaughn, starring Bryce Dallas Howard and Sam Rockwell. And it's a spy action comedy. Emphasis on the comedy. Although I don't even think I can emphasize a comedy because there's really not much there. So I won't give the movie away, but it was really, really awful. It was really disappointing to watch. I was not impressed. I was not entertained. I chuckled a couple times, but I was expecting to laugh more. I was hoping to laugh more, and I was just disappointed by it. And I remember Matthew Vaughn, the director, he made the Kingsman movie series. I liked those movies. Those are fun. They're lighthearted. They don't take themselves too seriously. And they are kind of like their own little comedy about the whole spy thriller, espionage, like British spies organizations. It's fun and it lives in its own world. It doesn't care it's not trying to be more than what it is. And so I really enjoyed those movies. And so I was excited to go see Argyle. I wasn't expecting much. I didn't read any reviews. I went in kind of blind, just like, okay, this movie came out. I'm going to watch it. So I did. Well, it was a disappointment. And I had just recently watched um, one of Matthew Vaughn's first films, or maybe not his first, but the first movie I remember of his that I recall enjoying, and I guess could say really put him on the map for me. And that was 2007's Stardust, starring Michelle Pfeiffer, Robert De Niro, Claire Danes, and Charlie Cox. That movie was really good. It was really fun. Again, didn't take itself too seriously. And coupled with that was a really good story, a really good traditional story about a young man, a young boy becoming a man, falling in love, all that stuff. It's a fairy tale, it's a quest, it's an adventure. It was a good movie. And as I've gone over through the internet, reading reviews and looking up, okay, Stardust, who else is talking about this movie? Turns out a lot of other people do remember this film. And it seems that it's not, but even the people who do remember it or do like it feel like not many other people do. It's like I've had to introduce it to people, be like, you've never seen this. This is a good movie. You'll really like it. And they always say, that was really good. How come I've never heard of this? And it's like, I know it's one of those films that just got lost. 2007 probably had a lot of other movies distracting us. So it kind of, I don't think it was expected to do well. And it probably didn't do that well at the box office, to be honest, but looking back on it, it's one of those things. It's almost, now I know I could be going overstepping here, but it's almost like a Princess Bride type. Um, it's in the Princess Bride type camp for me because they're both fairy tales. They're both kind of making fun of the fairy tale genre, not making fun of it, but just delighting in it with some, campy humor and some witty, charming characters. And they both kind of have the same sort of live in the same element. And so you could almost say to Stardust is our generation's Princess Bride, because I don't think Princess Bride did that well initially, but over time it became more and more popular and people just, love referencing it. And so Stardust, that's what it is for me. I love that movie. And Matthew Vaughn created it. And he also made Argylle, and it's really upsetting that someone who started out with really good chops as far as telling a good story, some really fantastical cinematography and art direction. It was really over the top, but it was it felt right. It was in its place. In Argylle, it's just out of place. Everything's out of place. There's characters that are not necessary. They're not they're not delivering any jokes, and they're not really forwarding the plot. So those characters, like, okay, they're not doing anything. If they were funny, they'd be fine. Okay, at least they're funny. But there's not even that in Argylle. And Argylle almost feels empty. And I've seen movies like this before where I'm watching it, I'm like, something's missing. There's something wrong. Like, I can't pinpoint it, but there's something wrong with this movie. And I think it's because I don't know what happened on set with this movie, Argylle. I think there was something wrong going on set or something, because there was just something missing from the performances, from the editing, from the post production. Like, it just it felt kind of empty. Like, it was like kind of something was removed from it that was supposed to complete it, but they removed it or something. I can't really say what, but I couldn't believe it. I was like, why? Okay, there's a lot of things to not like about this movie, but there's something that's really bothering me. I don't think it had enough of an ensemble cast, which is weird to say, I know, because there's like an all-star cast, like, of names we've all heard, like A-list, really big celebrity names in this movie. And yet it felt like there weren't enough, because our main character, our protagonist, Ellie Conway, played by Bryce Dallas Howard, she is a writer, gets sucked into the spy espionage world that she writes fiction novels about. And now all of a sudden it's real, and her novels have actually like predicted or have actually spoken of things that have actually happened, world events or events, political or within this spy community. And so now she's become a target. Sam Rockwell saves her from people on a train trying to kill her, so he saves her and pulls her into this world, and it's just the two of them for a while. And I think that was the problem. It was just the two of them for too long. They should have been introduced to someone else, furthering this in-depth world, the world building. That's what it is. Argylle did not do enough world building. It's just kind of there. And I think because Matthew Vaughn has created Kingsman, which is a pretty good amount of world building. The first movie is basically establishing the spy network, a spy organization, and you feel kind of sucked into it. You feel like, okay, like I buy this. This is cool. This is a cool place. I want to be part of this world. This is cool. I want to be a spy. With Argylle, that was missing. There wasn't enough world building. Too much emphasis on our heroine, Ellie Conway. She is the star of the movie. The movie's about her, obviously, and it just follows her adventure. It is an adventure story. However, it's an adventure story that misses the mark. And I'm going to explain to you why it failed, why a movie like Argylle failed, and why Stardust succeeded, as far as a good story goes that people think fondly of. Stardust may not have made a lot of money, but it did win a lot of people. People love this movie. Not enough people saw it. More and more people are seeing it. It's becoming more recognized. and I'm referencing an article I read on Collider that was written 2022 about Stardust and why it succeeded and why it actually succeeded in writing female characters well. Even though the story is centers around Tristan in Stardust, played by Charlie Cox, who is our hero, who our boy who goes into this magical world of Stormhold and brings back a token to win the heart of his true love back in his home village. Um, even though it's about him and his quest and his, eventual rise, or his eventual becoming a man, the story still the women in that story play very important roles, because without them, our hero is just this clumsy, awkward, shop boy or whatever. So their whole role in the film is not just to uplift him. They actually stand up for themselves. And this article does a great job of highlighting that, of explaining how these female characters, how cleverly they're written. They may not be the star, but they're big enough names to carry their own weight. Michelle Pfeiffer, hello. Michelle Pfeiffer is just like, she's a headlining actress in this movie. Charlie Cox, no one knew who he was at the time. They did make a good point to hire all these actors that are well-known household names, and then our main character, he's a kind of an unknown. So that did help the female characters do well and be memorable. This article mentioned that kind of goes through each character. So we start with Yvain, played by Claire Danes, Lamia, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, the evil witch, and then Una played by what's her name? Anyway, Una, his mom, in the story. She also, even though she's a much smaller role, she is very much the movie starts with her and ends with her. So it is kind of her story. And the article does mention that it is her story that we're kind of following. However, how she chooses to beget a son was very clever and cunning. So right off the bat, we have a woman, we have a princess who is a slave and decides to bed a man from another world in order to save her right to the throne of the kingdom of Stormhold. So right there, we have a woman who is intelligent. She's cunning. All of her brothers are fighting for the throne. Meanwhile, they forget about her, and she doesn't exist. And she uses that to her advantage in order to eventually be the one who does bring about a male heir to the throne in her kingdom. And so that grants her, of course, power. And not that that's what she was after, but she, that is her right as a princess. So we have right there off the bat, we have her doing that. Very well written, very clever. It was cute. Neil Gaiman was the one who wrote the book that the film is based on. And then you have Yvain. Yvain is the love interest. She's not just the one that he falls in love with eventually. She's very headstrong. She's very intelligent. She's very wise. She's very observant. But she's not, you don't ever get the feeling that she is helpless. Like she is, because she's in a world that she's not from. So she doesn't know she has to rely on others to survive, because she's not physically strong, but she does not let anyone think that she belongs to anyone. She has agency. So all the women in this story have agency. And then you have Lamia, the evil witch. She's not just an evil witch. She's the evil witch. She is the queen of these witches and these, powerful people. She's the most powerful, and she wants to protect her power. She wants to make sure she never loses her power. She relishes in her power. She's seeking eternal immortality so she can just stay in power, so she's and she does a good job, and as a character she is charming, and she is also emotions. She knows how to play her emotions and other people's emotions. She's manipulative. So she's a good villain, a well-written villain, spectacularly played and portrayed, brought to life by Michelle Pfeiffer, of course. And then we have Argylle. So we have a writer who is an introvert. She has anxiety. She's afraid of flying. She has a cat as a best friend. She's afraid to even just go on a date with guys, so she just stays at home with her cat. So we have a woman who's just afraid of everything, who lives in fear. But she writes good spy thriller novels because she does a lot of research. So we have that. And Bryce Dallas Howard does a fine job playing this character. I believe it. I believe that she is an anxious woman who lives through her stories and her novels and her characters that she's created. I believe it. I believe it 100%. And she brings it. In the beginning of the film, I buy it, and I'm there with her. The movie jumps around a lot. There's surprise. There's always some sort of twist happening all the time. And it's really, sometimes it's fun. In this case, it's kind of obnoxious. It happens too much. You get burnt out of all these, surprises, surprise, which, by the way, they're not that surprising because I saw all of them coming like before they even happened. I literally said like, it's too obvious, but this is what's going to happen. Hopefully I'm wrong and I'm surprised and I'm thrown for a loop. But no, that's not what happened. Exactly what I knew would happen, so it's not that really crazy of a shock, or this twists and stuff weren't really that impressive. They were trying, the spy. They were kind of making fun of the whole kind of soap opera-ish style of these spy thriller movies sometimes can become. So I wish I wish the joke landed better, because it wasn't really landing with me. It was just becoming annoying because there's a lot of other things annoying me. And so those were things distracting. Bryce Dallas Howard's performance at the beginning was good, believable. But also she doesn't have the comedic chops necessary for this kind of role. I'm going to sound cold. I'm going to sound really mean. I don't know why we're still trying. I don't know why they're still trying to make Bryce Dallas Howard a thing. She's she can act, like she can act. I've seen her, like, sure, but she's not a lead actress. I've never taken her seriously as a lead actress in anything I've seen her in. And even in Jurassic World, they tried to make her the main character, but let's be honest, nobody was seeing those movies for her. They wanted to see Chris Pratt. Like, he's the one that people want to see because he's charming, because he's funny, because he's handsome, because he's very, you just believe him and you just want to be his friend, and you just want to, like, you want him to protect you or whatever, or you want to fight alongside him. He's just a likable person. He's a likable character. I'm not saying Bryce Dallas Howard isn't likable. I think she'd be more likable if she would stick to supporting roles. I think supporting roles are what will give her more strength as an actress. So right there, I think they failed with the casting of her, because eventually in the story it takes a turn, it takes a million turns, and then finally it takes a big turn, and we find out something about Ellie that really changes everything, which I saw coming, by the way. It was not a surprise. And so we have that now, and her character basically becomes an entirely different character, and I'm laughing at it. Like, maybe I'm supposed to laugh. If I was supposed to laugh, like, okay, good. But I wasn't laughing in a way of like, oh my God, this is funny, this is great writing. Oh my God. I was just laughing kind of like, really? Like, we're doing this? Like, for one, I'm not surprised. Too. Okay. Um, it was just she's not she's not meant for this role. There's so many other choices that could have been made. Why didn't Sophia Boutella get this role? Like, she's exotic looking. Maybe she's too exotic looking. Fine. Get a more attractive, younger actress who's white for mass audiences, like a Sydney Sweeney. Sydney Sweeney is very attractive. But I've seen her in roles where she can look very average. They can make her look average for like the opening of the movie, and then when the character turns, you just throw on some really good makeup and a costume on her, and then all of a sudden she's like this badass, sexy, like, you know, character. It's not hard. Bryce Dallas Howard doesn't pull those off. She just doesn't. So it was really poor casting that in that place. Also, her character as a woman, a female, strong female character. The first part of the movie, she's being saved by this guy, by Sam Rockwell's character. She's being saved by him, of course. Um, and then towards the end of the film, she's the one saving him time after time, and she's the one doing everything. She is she's the key to, she's answered everything. Like she's just the one who does everything because she's that awesome. Like, and it's like, okay, like I kind of get the character arc here we're trying to do. But you should not have had Bryce Dallas Howard as the actress doing it, because I don't buy it. And I know it's a comedy. I know it's a ridiculous like film meant to make fun of the genre, but like you got like it's almost like it's almost at her expense, because I feel I don't like I'm not like laughing as in like because Bryce Dallas Howard is relishing in the fact that she doesn't fit the look of this character. They're not trying to do, they're trying to push forward that no, she is sexy. No, she is really kick ass. Like she really does know what she's doing. They're trying to push that and kind of make fun of the genre itself. But all it comes out, all I'm getting from it is that I'm kind of laughing at her doing it. And I don't want to laugh at her. Like that's not what I went there for. And so it was really awkward. It was really uncomfortable. It was really sad to watch. Like I didn't want to laugh at this actress because, well, I don't think she's fit for this role. It doesn't mean there's not real, she could do well in several other roles. So the writing Matthew Vaughn has failed is writing female characters that are convincing, that are strong, that are complex, that overcome challenges. In this one, she doesn't overcome challenges. She just kind of like realizes that she's the best at everything. Like that's all it is. There's no real like she has to she doesn't have to overcome anything. Everyone's holding her back. So she has to overcome them. And I hate that like plot. I hate that motivation for a character like hers. There's so many female characters that have been written that are strong, that rise up to the occasion, that are brave. And that's one thing that I don't feel like is being portrayed well in these characters that we're supposed to believe in, is that they're not being portrayed as brave and courageous. They're just being portrayed as kind of bitchy, or like don't hold me back. Like just kind of it's not endearing. It's not an endearing thing to write to a character that you're supposed to cheer for. And I'm tired of these movies not cashing in or not realizing that the bravery of a woman is something that we can really that a lot of people would enjoy seeing. It's not bravery we're seeing. We're seeing just pushing people out of the way because they're keeping her, holding her back. And it's like maybe there was some of that in society. So it's some sort of like cultural narrative thing. I don't know. I really don't care. But like there are movies where that star women that have existed for decades that people seem to forget. It's like this is a great movie. It didn't succeed at the box office, no, but it is a good movie. And many people who respect the genre of these films look back in at those specific films and be like, this is really good. Why aren't we making more stuff like this? Especially with the technology we have, especially with the wide variety of talented actresses we have. One example that I always come back to is The Long Kiss Goodnight, starring Gina Davis. Holy shit. She is terrifying in that movie. Like she somehow balances likability with intensity, and it works. It's a similar The Long Kiss Goodnight is a very similar story to Argylle. Very similar plot, basically. Like it's literally copy paste. Gina Davis is far more likable in the opening of the movie. She's a mom, she's a school teacher. She everyone knows she has amnesia. She discovers things about herself slowly. She's hired a PI to try and figure out who she is, and no one can find out who she is. And so she's just like, she kind of gave up. She's like, oh well, this is my life now. I'll move on. And then something happens, and then the story begins. And she's dragged back into her old life, and she finds her old self, and so she's battling with her old self, and then there's this new self that she's created over the several years with a child and a live-in boyfriend in a small town. In a she's created a new person in her absent memory. And so now those two people are fighting for space in her psyche. And uh, and it's and it's really fascinating, and it's complex, and seeing it play out on the screen, they did a good job at putting it out there. And but at the end of the day, her character, who thought was strong because she was a spy and because she was an assassin and she killed people, she was tough and she didn't care about anybody, she had that missing for several years, and she became a warm, soft, nurturing mother. This movie did a great job marrying those two people into a character that is badass, is not afraid, has skills, has integrity, not integrity, well, integrity, but just has like grit, and they paired that with the maternal aspect of being a woman. That is one of the most powerful things. That movie's it's a very ridiculous, over the top action comedy. It's great. It's a great movie, but it's also has some really like deep elements to it. And I was like, this is great. This is great. Like, why don't we have movies like this today? Argylle is what we get stuck with instead. We literally have a woman who discovers herself towards the end, and it's just a laughing stock. It's not even, and I meant, no, it's meant to be a comedy, but like you didn't do it. You didn't. No one got the joke. Like, people just hate this movie. And I know I'm talking a lot about a movie that I don't like, wasn't necessarily excited about, really, wasn't really expecting much from, but it just got me thinking, like, why this movie had a lot going for it. This movie had all the things. It had all the money it could ever want. It had the all-star cast that it could have. It had everything that any director would dream of having to make their story come to life. It just fell flat, and it's really upsetting. It's like there's so many missed opportunities with this, and they just missed it every turn. Every turn in the story, like, they decide to leave good old fashioned storytelling behind for this whatever new sludge or slop this is. It was just, I just, again, it's really it's a female led movie by Matthew Vaughn, and it's a failure. And people, I've read briefly people saying how, like, his movies have always been male led cast. Like, the cast has always been led by men. Like, it was time for him to make one led by a woman. It's like, how's that going? Like, obviously there's a reason in this genre you use men, because people just buy it. Like, and when it just doesn't work. Like, because when a man is, we're making spy thriller comedy, spy action comedy with men as the stars, who are the ones that who are taking us through the story, they laugh at themselves, or we're supposed to laugh at them when they do something funny, or when they're, being charming. They're in on the joke. Like, they know what they're doing, and they know that they're making this. But with this movie, it was trying to make fun of a genre that, but like, there's not really many female led spy thriller or spy actions films. So it's like, who are you making fun of? Are you making fun of women in spy action comedies, or spy action films, or spy action novels? Because I don't think I thought that was like a no. You don't make fun of women who are trying to be badass and save the world. So what are you trying to do? Like, I'm confused. So I'm just trying to I spent a lot of time thinking during this movie, because I was watching it, but I wasn't enjoying it, trying to figure out what were they trying to do, like, what was the point. And I'm overthinking it because they weren't trying to do anything. They got hundreds of millions of dollars to make this movie. They didn't try. They didn't have to put in a lot of work. None of the actors really wanted to be there. No one wanted to make it. The studio just needed another big spring hit, a winter hit, I guess, because it's still February. And there's a reason they released it in February, because they knew it wasn't going to do good. So they had to release it during this time because they're saving the good stuff for later. But it was just not, no one cared. The movie just lost all, people just didn't care to make it, like who were making it. I think Bryce Dallas Howard, honestly, like she wanted to make it and she was excited to be in it. However, I think she was the only one, and so it sucks. So, like, it's not her fault. It's not her fault. She just didn't have a crew and a cast that wanted to do something great, and it's too bad. So, anyway, that's my review of Argylle, coupled with a few other older films to recall back when we wrote female characters very well, very strong, very brave. And I hope we can learn from this in the future and we can have good stories again. We can have fun films again. So until next time, don't watch Argylle.